Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I have a very fun episode for you here today. Today I have as a guest a friend who I met through another dear friend who we walk in similar circles in many different ways. And she's a powerful creator, an artist, a poet, a photographer, coach, an entrepreneur, a yogi, and she has a lot of wisdom and magic to share. So I'm excited for the conversation we're about to have. Hang tight in just a sec. I'll let you know who we're talking to. It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur. Awesome. So we have Julia Muse on the line with us today. Julia Muse's creations and curiosity live at the crossroads of art, healing, magic, and entrepreneurship. At 20 years old, yoga was her gateway drug into new realms of alchemy and possibility. She is still following that same golden thread, now facilitating group spaces for liberation through the practice of invocation and storytelling, guiding others to use self-expression as a vessel for self-actualization and empowerment. She also works mentoring, healing, and intuitive arts facilitators into higher expressions of service, specializing in course creation, personal branding, and organic social media marketing. Welcome to the show, Julia.
Thank you, Molly.
So happy to have you here. So tell us a little bit about your journey of becoming an entrepreneur. It started with yoga, and how did it expand, evolve, and how'd you get to what you're doing now?
So I feel like yoga was the first place that I ever learned that there were tools that I could use to support my many bodies. And I just started feeling good about myself and my life for the first time after I started practicing yoga. I was always a very athletic person. I played sports and was a gymnast all through my life, and fractured my ankle when I was 20 years old and was in a walking boot and a cast for 3 months. I got super depressed and I couldn't run for a while, and I was suggested that I started stretching. So I started doing yoga as a way to just heal, and it led me to so much more beyond just a physical exercise. And I was just like, holy shit, this is amazing. Just kept kind of continued curiosity of different ways of alternative healing modalities. I live in Humboldt County, which is a bounty of healers that live here, and have just had access to energy healers, epic yoga teachers, and just everyone that I kind of have interacted with up here has been on some sort of path of sort of seeking. And I've been super blessed with many teachers that I've sought after, and some that I've just stumbled upon that have kind of just kept me digging for more and following what I call that golden thread of just like, oh, this feels exciting and expansive. I'm going to keep going this way. And just kept kind of doing that. And I trimmed cannabis for 7 years. And while I'm so grateful for all that community and industry brought me to, I knew that was not something I could do sustainably and long term. And it was just kind of sucking my soul after a while. And I stumbled upon a course that a man that I met at a festival was teaching called Beyond Prosperity. And I had no idea what it was about. And I just was like, that feels good. I'm going to follow that thread. And it ended up being a group coaching course on becoming a coach. And at first I was like, I don't want to be a coach. I'm a photographer. I don't really know if I want to do this. And that industry was very new. This was like 6 years ago. So I didn't have as much reference or outside role models to kind of look to in that space yet. I'm sure it was prevalent, but not to the extent that it is now. And it took me a while to kind of understand that I could really create my coaching to be whatever I wanted it to be. And the limited idea I had of what a life coach was, I think was kind of the hurdle I needed to jump over. But I took that course, I invested a bunch of money in it. And I think that my own stubbornness to just make it work for me is what propelled me forward. And even though I didn't feel ready, one day I was doing this trim job and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm like crying on my way to work, and my boss is just kind of an asshole and I'm done. There's far better uses of my time and energy than trimming pot. The world does not need another cannabis trimmer. And I was really into writing. Journaling has always been not always been, I guess over the last like 4 years, it's been one of my primary practices. And I thought maybe I could get someone to journal with me. So I launched my first writing course. It was called Writing Ritual. And I just gave some like journal prompts and I did like a 5-week long class. And I didn't make quite as much as I would have in my trim job, but I made enough to like cover my rent and my expenses. I was like, okay, that was kind of like the catalyst I needed. And to realize I could really make these containers whatever I wanted them to be. And that's when it got fun. And I could kind of like tweak it a little bit, be like, okay, that worked good this time. I'm going to do a little bit better this time. Or I really liked how this teacher brought in this way of facilitating and this kind of ratio to teaching. And just, I've always been such a learner. I've always invested in myself in those ways. And yeah, just kind of kept playing around with different tools that have worked for me and finding and playing with different ways that I can share that with others in really effective ways. And then that kind of led me to seeing my friends. I have a lot of friends who are practitioners and healers and artists. And I was just kind of intuiting, looking at their brands and their businesses like, hey, you should do it like this. Or have you ever thought about doing this? Or I love when you talk about this. Or I would love to see more of this part of your personality and the way that you're showing up online. So I just kind of naturally started doing business mentorship with people because it excited me. And I just saw it as another extension of art.
That's awesome. There's so many beautiful nuggets I want to bring out of that. But first off, I just want to say it's so beautiful how you navigated the journey of, I kind of feel this is right. So there's like this intuitive knowing of something about this direction, that investing in this program or course, it feels resonant. And then that journey just led you through embodying more of the things you're already interested in, launching things, creating courses and programs, seeing how it felt, and then navigating that when you realize it could be better, or there was a part of it that didn't feel as fun. And so what would I like to create next? The bringing in all parts of ourselves to our business is such it can be really confronting. It can be really scary. It can be hard to figure out how to do it, and can also be like the most fulfilling thing to feel like you've got all these different creative and magical parts of you that are getting expressed and funneled into something that can actually help people, that it's so fun. I just love witnessing that in you. And I also love noting, like, I am so that same kind of person. I invested in this thing and it was like kind of a scary big investment. I'm going to get whatever the fuck I can out of it. And I want anyone out there who's listening to hear that if you've been afraid to raise your rates, if you've been afraid to charge so much for that course or that program, that sometimes the people who maybe can't afford it and join it anyway get a huge energetic leap up by forcing themselves to commit to something like that, or by allowing themselves to commit to something like that and get the most out of it because it felt like a leap. That's a really good story for why it's okay to price your rates a little higher than feels comfortable, I think, because people really do. Some of us get a lot more out of it when it feels like a leap like that. That's awesome. So you do so many things, and you're like this creative wizard, which I identify with as well. Tell me how you've brought the art in to running a business.
Awesome. So I just think of everything I do as art.
Yeah.
And being able to bring in, because I'm a photographer, so I have a background in visual storytelling, and weaving that into my brand has been so fun. Like, I do a branding photo shoot for every course that I launch. And so much of that brainstorming process of like, okay, what do I want my outfit to be? Where's the location going to be? What are the colors and textures? And is there a soundtrack to this? Really gives me a lot of ideas. And it's kind of like a divination process of like what I'm going to teach. Like, I'll kind of hear that those different pieces come forward first. I host I call it my coven. It's like a visionary empowerment training. I do that twice a year. And this last round I named after my favorite band, Billy String's last album. Mm-hmm. And so getting to play with like that kind of process as art, as letting these pieces kind of come forward as like I'm a tender to the soul of this program and kind of just get to sit by the fire and listen to what it wants to tell me. And sometimes that's words, sometimes it's plants, and getting to incorporate all the witchy, weird, esoteric, and also creative parts of myself into my work. And I love modeling and making art and being able to hire a photographer and get my outfit and just kind of orchestrate that part of myself into my work is really, really fun. And I just feel so lucky to be me, and that all these pieces came together, and I prayed for it. It's like, I tell people, you don't need to know how to do anything. You just need to know what to ask for, and to just trust and show up like higher self, like, please help me to serve at my highest and clearest capacity and stay out of my own way and serve through the expression of my talents, gifts, and abilities. Like, show me how to do that. And just continuously praying for that. And then it's like those details figure itself out. And I need to be in creative expression in my work for me to be engaged and interested in it. So I put a lot of attention into the visual branding part because it's what I need in order to get that kind of information from what I'm doing.
Yeah. And it feels resonant and it comes from that place. I know last time I saw you, you were like 2 days before going into a Vipassana meditation. So how has meditation or that introspection played a part in the ritual and creation of your, business and message and everything?
I love that question. Meditations probably help my work more than anything else. Just being able to ground myself and all these ideas and conversations that are constantly going on in the mind of a creative and an entrepreneur, and how to execute that. When I came back from my first Vipassana 4 years ago, was the first time that I made like a $10,000 launch. I was meditating 2 hours a day. Like, I was in a really rough, emotional, spiritual, like every body of mine was going through major repair. I was going through a breakup and was just like out for the count and could not hold my shit together. And now I see that as a huge initiation portal. But at the time, it was really scary. And I went to my first Vipassana and I came back and I started meditating 2 hours a day. And I was able to show up for interviews of calls, and I wasn't scared. And I was scared a little bit, but not to the extent that I was before, and could just fortify myself to like stay out of my own way. And so now, like, my practice, it's like I can just hear messaging. I can just hold myself. I move myself and my energy more effectively. I'm a very hyperactive person and I'm kind of scattered, and meditation has helped me just see a through line, work a little bit more linearly. I'm a pretty non-linear creator, but it's given me the ability to have a lot more tactful traction in the way that I create and serve.
Yeah, totally. I feel like there's so much information out there about how we should be running our businesses, or about the best strategy, or the 5 steps, or the 3 mistakes, or whatever. And there's a lot of input for those of us who are trying to grow a business or who are growing businesses, especially as coaches and holistic practitioners, especially as spiritual women or female identifying people who are more intuitive and receptive. There's a lot of input. And I think that having a meditation practice, or having a place you can go to get quiet and to listen, maybe in nature, it's so important because it allows you to come back to what your truth is. And it almost like opens that channel so that you can ask questions, so that you can get answers, so that you can return to that flow state that leads to traction and momentum, rather than that pushing state and that like always feeling like something's not there, or something's missing, or there's not enough. It's a totally different energy to be coming from, especially when you get into your marketing. All of my marketing courses and programs and groups have a huge guided meditation aspect to them too, because that's a huge part. The opening, the visioning, the asking for what we're asking for is a huge part of the fulfillment and success, in my interesting point of view, as we move along. So I love that that's a part of your practice. And I love that you've gone back. I did a Vipassana I think 5 or 6 years ago, but I haven't gone back yet. For those of us who don't know, Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. So you basically sit quietly and don't talk to anyone for 10 whole days. And you get to know the inner workings of your mind so intimately well, which can be confronting and also very inspiring and eye-opening. So tell us a little bit about the work you do with your clients, because you're a business coach, you're a mentor, you're a branding expert. What are your favorite parts about helping your clients to create?
I really love helping helpers be able to be more effective in the way that they're serving and just kind of see beyond just doing one-on-one work with a single client. I like helping people craft larger experiences to bring people into that really utilize their unique gifts. And I kind of pivot between doing strictly energy work and to doing business coaching, just depending on like where I'm at in my flow. I love using teaching invocation. I like working with people after they've done my invocation work with me, after they've done the more visionary training, because it helps me help them better doing their more business side of their work. I think having a language around the energetics of how I work really helps. Like I tell people, you're going to get more out of working with me one-on-one if you work in one of my group programs first, because it gives people just learn the way that I flow in that way. So I really love teaching how to pray, or rather reminding people how to pray. I think that that's a huge component for my personal journey. And for me, guiding other people is just remembering to ask for what you want. And I think to ask for what you want, you need to know what you want and what you need. So it develops a level of self-awareness that I think is just priceless.
Yeah.
So working there and then also bringing it over into the marketing part. I run my business pretty much solely through Instagram, and really teaching people how to make content in a way and not be scared of flexing in all these different ways that you can through the app, and storytelling as a way to get clients and to just build your audience. Like people always tell me that they come to my work because I'm really authentic. Like I have no filter. I share a lot about my personal life. You don't have to do that. I always tell people, like, you get to share whatever level is comfortable and good for you. But I know for me, so much of the way that I teach is through storytelling. So I really encourage people to do that and use social media also as part of your spiritual practice. Again, this doesn't have to be that way for everyone. It's just the way that I've learned to grow with the app. I've had Instagram for 10 years. So I've grown as a person with the technology. And I feel that it's a very powerful way that we can both use it as a tool for our own personal evolution, as well as marketing for our business.
Would you say more about that, using Instagram as part of a spiritual practice?
Yeah, totally. So I love to write. It's a huge way that I gain understanding about my process. And so there's like a golden window I have where I wake up in the morning, I keep my phone on airplane mode for as long as humanly possible. Get up, I meditate, make my mate, make my breakfast. I sit down, I journal 3 pages, do my little invocation by lighting my candle, and I film that on my phone. I keep my phone airplane mode, so I do most of my filming for stories just through the camera on my phone, and the quality is so much better. I hardly ever record through the Instagram app. So I record through that. I record my prayer, light my candle, pull my tarot card, sit down with my journal. I write the date and I film that. So that kind of also builds a ritual where people are used to seeing my practice, and that builds trust with people. It gives me the opportunity to just kind of speak to what I'm praying on, give other people the opportunity to hear what I'm praying on, and let that vocalization be a magnet in itself. And then after I journal, that's my prime time for writing. I make my content that way. And so I have like a backing of photos. I do photo shoots quite often, some for fun, some that I curate more specifically for courses I'm launching. Because having those photos on deck really helps me be able to create content. I'm like, oh, I have all these beautiful images I get to play with. And I write, I'm like, oh, that image is going to be perfect. I'm talking about what it means to be a visionary, and I have that blindfold picture. Oh, perfect. And kind of get to see the magic that happens between the visual and the written part there, and post that. And so, yeah, it's really me examining thoughts that I'm having about my life, or about what it means to be a magical person, and what it means to be a magical person out loud, and to be a leader. So I think of like my content writing as a lot of my own self-inquiry, and I get to use that as a way to deepen other people's inquiry in themselves, and also inquiry in me and my work.
Yeah, I love that recognition that sharing that part of your day is another way that you're building trust with your people, that you're walking your talk and showcasing it, and they get to see that you're part of that practice that you're helping people to create in their lives too. That's awesome. We have so much in common, by the way. I know we already knew that, but wow, we have so many things that overlap. I want to just bring up prayer because I know at least some of us have an aversion to the word prayer because it seems associated with religion. And I know some of us have some church wounds, not everyone. And those of you out there who have religion, you have it, whatever works for you. When you use the term prayer, is it God that you're praying to? What's that sort of, how's that work for you?
Yeah, most oftentimes I'm praying to higher self. And my idea of what higher self is like the soul part of me that is not incarnated into my personality, that just knows and sees beyond my little human experience I'm having here, that I can kind of counsel and receive support from. And other times I'll be more specific, and sometimes I'll call upon, my well ancestors or any other benevolent beings that want to be of support to me and call upon more specifically. And sometimes I'm just like, someone help me. But just knowing that I'm not, I don't use the word God, but I use universe sometimes, but higher self is what I most often pray to.
I love that. And there's, along those lines, our higher self isn't finite, and thus it's in no way disconnected from others. So higher self isn't like a part of our ego that's separate or different from other people. It's really about that higher connectedness where all answers reside. So I love that. Thanks for answering. That was a interesting question, but I appreciate you going for it. Mm-hmm. How about the course creation process? How often do you create new stuff for yourself? You said you have the Coven, which runs twice a year. Tell us a little bit about your other programs.
Yeah, so I run the Coven twice a year, and then I have another program called Story Medicine that I'm just about to be in launch of this week. That's a storytelling space. I assigned a prompt once a week, and it's something along the lines of like an initiation that you've gone through or an important person on your journey and things of that nature. And everyone gets a week to write a 3-page story about the prompt. And then we share in a private Facebook group. And then our calls are sometimes they're up to 3 hours, because once you start sharing these like really personal stories with folks, we build intimacy in a way that I've never seen through any of my other courses, because it's like we're telling our stories in a way that's just not just sharing. We're sitting for like a week and being like, how do I want to word this and talk about this thing that happened to me? And people have written about losing children and drug addictions and all sorts of things, and falling in love and having children also. But we share that in there, and everyone gets to go around and share the medicine they received from their piece and their process about writing it. So that opens up the dialogue, and then everybody else gets to give their 2 cents about like what they received from the piece. And it's the most time and like labor inducing thing that I host, and I make the least amount of money from it. But it's one of my favorite parts to being Julia Muse is hosting the space, and I get so much out of it. And like I've written pieces in that space that have altered the course of my life. Wow. So I really, really love that space. And I do it probably like twice a year too, where like wherever I can squeeze it in. I know coming out of this last Vipassana, I'm like, I need story medicine. So I participate in the space as a facilitator and a participant. Yeah. So another reason why I like to do it is I get to write a story for, 6 weeks. So that's something I do. And then I have a business mastermind. It's been a couple years since I've launched it because I got really sick last year and I couldn't work for a very long time. And that was a whole nother initiation story in itself. But I'm getting back on the ball here being like, okay, no, this is still important to me. Because for a minute I had to check that. I'm like, do I like doing that? Like, is this something I want to do? Because there was a moment where I had to like really re-suss out my relationship with social media and the way that I've been seeing just like this not surplus, I don't like that using that word in that context, but there's just so much of that now that's available there. And I love and appreciate and respect the technology so much. And also I see how it's also a way of disassociating. So I had to like check that. And now I've come full circle after Vipassana. And I'm like, okay, no, we still like doing that. It's very important. And if anything, I think it's important to have people with really high integrity and who are including the collective as, being a new earth steward into being a leader. Like, we need more of that.
Yeah.
So I've come full circle with that again. But now that I'm like, have learned so much, it's been 2 years since I've done that space, and I have so much more to resource to draw upon, especially after being so sick for a while. Like, I feel like I'm a completely different person. And so much of the last 6 months of my life, I've just been figuring out like who this person is now.
Yeah.
So I'm like reconstructing that space, and I'm kind of in a new creation with that as well. Being like, okay, so I want to make it this long now. I like to bring in guest teachers into the business space because I feel like my limited perspective, and I know so many amazing, extraordinary teachers that also I want to learn from. So I use my learning spaces. Like, I learn just as much from my students and my clients as I teach them. And I really think of it as like sacred gathering work that we're doing here to, kind of support each other. We kind of like leapfrog, into helping each other get to that next lily pad of awakening. Business as a spiritual person is so much a part, like my path is so much through my business and my work, and really just always asking to be of the highest and clearest service, and surrendering it up, and just being patient and waiting for when those answers land and feel good in my body. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at right now, my course creating.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I just love how much writing is a part of your work. And I know it's not all healers and people who are out there trying to market their businesses or share their message and their magic have an innate capacity for writing. However, writing is an avenue for so much else to come through that I think it's an amazing practice to cultivate, even if it's uncomfortable for people at first. And you're just another living example of how much can unfold and come through when we're willing to put words down on the page and introspect and create in that way. So I really appreciate that. Another beating of the drum of writing as a tool. It's awesome. So what are the best ways for people to find you? It sounds like Instagram is the main best way.
Yeah, right now I direct people to Instagram. My website someone's working on, so I'm in between domains, so I won't send anyone there. But yeah, Instagram, Inner Muse is my tag there. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
And definitely follow so you can get those morning stories and prayers and affirmations. And yeah, I love following on Instagram. It is very entertaining and inspiring at the same time. Yeah.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that we got connected. If Alex is listening to this episode, thank you so much, Alex, for bringing Julia into my life. I so appreciate it. And thank you for coming on the show and sharing your magic. And thank you for walking your path and like embodying the magic that you truly be, and bringing so much of yourself into your work. It's inspiring, and yeah, it's just a beautiful example for people that you can be all parts of you and bring that in. And that just makes your business so much more magnetic. So I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you, Molly.
Any last words of wisdom that you want to leave people with?
Keep creating. I tell people too, when I'm looking at someone's Instagram and they're like, should I delete all my old stuff that doesn't feel in alignment and in resonance? I'm like, no, keep it. Like, I love being able to go back and track someone's journey. Like, if you go scroll back to seeing when I first started my Instagram, you'll see me drinking IPAs, playing rugby. I'm like, yes, watch my trajectory to being this mystical weirdo now. So that's why I always tell people, if you don't like what you made, just keep creating. Like, it'll get pushed down. And yeah, there's so much learning that happens in that space.
I love that. Keep creating. Awesome. Thank you so much, Julia. And thank you everyone out there for listening. Whatever happens, keep asking big questions and taking bold action, because you too are here for a reason. Bye.